Well, here we are live from the Inferno after today. Joe Rayo and Joe Chaffee, or if you prefer Joe Chaffee and Joe Rayo. Either way, it's the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this 20th of July, a Monday in the year 2020.
So it's 7/20/2020.
All right, I get the 2020 thing,
Yeah.
but what's the seventh?
No, seven is the month,
Right,
July. 7 20
20,
20
2020.
2020.
Oh, all right. So that
Yeah,
means it won't be able to do this again until 7/21/21/21.
or something like that.
All right. I'll make sure that I don't book
We could also
anything
do it.
to
We could
conflict
also
with that.
do it next month, 8/20/2020.
Right.
We still have what? We got 4 more 20s to go.
I
So
know. This is one of those things that shows up in Facebook where somebody says that this will not happen again for 67,000 million years. Okay.
exactly.
And then
Exactly.
usually about two or three comments in, you'll find the smart enough person that will say, no, this will happen again next week, next month,
Next
to
month, next
a
year,
week
or
from
whatever.
Wednesday at 1:10,
Yeah.
whichever it is. So we burned up today. I didn't get a sea breeze until late this afternoon, and that kind of shut the. I think I got to about 92 or 3, and that was
You know
it.
what we were talking about though yesterday, and something that I was questioning is the fact that a lot of the dynamic models were indicating that there could be some precipitation, maybe a shower or thunderstorm, not late today, but more like late last night into early this morning. And sure enough, Joe, last night around 10:30, we had a heavy
You
downpour.
had a downpour? There
Yeah,
were a
we
couple of specks on the radar that popped up, but that was really about it. I mean, you
Well,
really.
it was this line that came toward us and was breaking up, but
Right.
just enough of it held together so that we actually saw something. And if you remember, a couple of days ago, Storm Prediction Center had us in a marginal zone of severe weather for today, mostly late today.
Right, and
And
not a
that was
flake,
hitting.
not a flake or an ice pellet.
Right,
And I
exactly.
didn't get a flake or an ice pellet last night either.
Huh.
The only thing that I was upset about last night again was I went down to the beach about 8 o'clock last night, and I was thinking that okay, maybe I'll hang. The idea was I'll hang around till 9:30, quarter of 10, to get a look at Neowise, but it turned out that it was Neo wasn't, because there was a deck of high clouds on the northwest sky again. So actually, the sun disappeared about a half an hour before sunset because the cloud cover was there. So there was no opening for me to see it. So I missed it yet again.
You may have a better, in fact, I think you'll have a good chance tonight because I just went outside and while it's not the bluest sky I've seen, the skies are clear. And if you can find it after 9:30 or 9:45, you can find the Big Dipper. Just look a ways below and maybe off to the left of the bowl of the Dipper. And if you have binoculars, just scan around and you'll eventually find it, I think,
All
tonight.
right. So I got the high temperatures for today, Mr. Rayo. If I make sure I got the right map on this, which doesn't appear that I do. So give me 1 second. And I got to switch. Okay, here we go. There it is. All right. So yes, I do have the high temperatures for today, and we hit a number of spots hit 100 today. In New Jersey, McGuire hit 100. Vineland hit 100.
Wow.
In Pennsylvania, Harrisburg got to 100. And a lot of spots got to mid and upper 90s. A little bit further south, Maryland, we had Carroll County Regional Airport again. Baltimore hit 100. Frederick, Maryland hit 100. Fredericksburg in Virginia hit 100. A buck two at the Warrenton Faulk FA, before I get in trouble, help me with this.
I can't.
FAUQUIER. Faulquier?
I, hold on, I'm looking for. Fuck queer. Fuck. Oh,
Oh well, next. Let's move on. 104 at Fairport, Virginia. That looks like it was an automated station. A buck one at another automated station that I have no idea where that is. The US 301 weather station at the mouth of the Potomac River was 102. And Ashland Hanover Airport, which is just north of Richmond, got to the century mark. And we'll give you one last one here. Charlottesville also got to 100. And also Luray Caverns got to 100. And by the way, not to feel left out, our Johnny Quest, because he's up at like 3,000 feet, sailing at some mountaintop there in Northwest Virginia, got his first 80-degree day today. He got over the 80-degree mark for the 80-degree mark for the first time. Must be nice to have elevation this time of year.
It must be. Not necessarily nice when it's the winter time and everybody around you is going for rain or sleet, and you're the only one in the vicinity that probably is high enough to get a significant snowfall, unless you like that kind of weather.
Well, and some people and some people do. Not to forget our friends up to the north. We have who got to 97 today? 97 in Hudson, New York, which I guess is not that far from Albany. Hartford got to 97, both at Windsor Locks and in Brainerd Airport. 96 to the east in Vernon, Rockville. Boston got to 93. There's a 97 in here in Central Mass. The Ware River at Bear Falls Dam at Bear. Okay, that's what it says. 95 just west of Springfield at Westfield Barnes Municipal Airport. Upstate New York further, a little bit lower today with some of the numbers that got up over 90 and some severe weather that happened yesterday. So most of the highs up in upstate North Central and the Lakeshore back over to Western New York near Buffalo, generally in the low to mid 80s. And the same holds back when you go into Western Pennsylvania. The numbers were lower today with temperatures mostly in the lower 80s. Must be nice. Looks like the 90-degree line, you could probably draw it from Williamsport, which got to 93, and Scranton at 90. So it was everywhere east of there that burned up. And let's look at Maine. Let's feel good about life and look at Maine, because Maine is a beautiful place. Portland got to 94, low 90s in southwest Maine. Upper 80s to low 90s in southern New Hampshire, a little bit cooler as you went to the north. Bangor, Maine got to 91.
What was Mount Washington today, Joe?
I see, 59.
59. Lovely.
59. Right now, 55. Right now, 55, dew point 50. A west-northwest wind at 40, gusting to 51. Now, if you can manage to just, stand and not get blown away, the visibility is 70 miles.
Wow.
70 miles.
I wish, I met one of the weather observers up there. His name was Al Oxton, and this was back in the 70s. And he said he loved it up there. I mean, like when
how could you not love it?
I mean, it's great. Maybe not so great if you're up there in the wintertime, but in the summer, must be fabulous.
Mm-hmm. Now, you would think with all this heating that we could generate a thunderstorm somewhere. But in fact, tonight, and as you pointed out, SPC with their marginal risk yesterday, this was a rare miss for them, by the way. I think this is only the second time in the last number of months that they had a risk area up the day before, only to take it down for us, and rightfully so to take it down because of the fact that obviously the air was not unstable enough. You couldn't even generate any pop-ups. But we are seeing some storms flaring up now in back over in northern Virginia, back through West Virginia. You can see it on the satellite loop here. The clouds, the higher cloud tops, really bubbling up rather quickly, and also down into parts of North Carolina. I'm going to come back to. There's two disturbances, one in the Gulf of Mexico and the other one that's over Cuba right now and northward into the Florida Straits and the Bahamas. We're going to talk about that when we do the tropics in just a bit. I just want to stay on these thunderstorms. And Joe, you can see on the radar moving in northeastern West Virginia and Western Maryland probably will get some. And there's a couple of cells down not too far from the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. A lot of activity back over through Kentucky. And then you go down into North and South Carolina and into parts of Georgia. You see some scattered showers and storms. That's where the SPC wound up moving the risk area tonight, where they have a marginal risk of severe weather in the Carolinas. And we're also seeing some activity back across the Gulf states. You also see the showers and storms in East Texas and in Southwest Louisiana. There's a weak little low that's formed off the Texas coast. And if this had more time, it probably would become a tropical depression or a tropical storm. But it looks like it's going to go inland before it has time to do that.
Yeah. That would have been what, number 7, right?
Right.
That's crazy.
Well,
That's,
don't count it out yet. It doesn't go. It's the low doesn't really move inland until tomorrow afternoon. So you never know. The way this season has gone so far, they really want to. They seem to really want to spin up. Some showers and storms up in the northern plains. Let's just run through real quick. SPC's risk areas tonight: Virginia, North Carolina, northern South Carolina, northernmost Georgia. You see that small area of south risk, slight risk back through Kentucky and northern Tennessee, and we have a slight risk in South Dakota down into Kansas. And then for tomorrow, hang on one second here. The day 2 outlook, there we go. I just want to make sure I got the right one. So the day 2 outlook, this is for tomorrow into early Wednesday. So it's just got this sort of rather large amorphous area of marginal risk from the Delmarva Peninsula in North Carolina west into the middle and upper Mississippi Valley, and then continuing further west out into the plains. And then on day 3, which is Wales Day, as my old buddy Willard Scott would say, marginal risk back on Wednesday, Joe. Northeast Kentucky to the Hudson Valley, the Catskills, southern New York, and just touching western Connecticut and western Long Island. So we might have something to work with, I guess, on Wednesday.
Yesterday in my discussion on my Facebook page, I had
You still
said,
talk?
well,
You still talk on Facebook? Just
no,
wondering.
I just like to. Yeah, who does anymore?
Oh, of course. Go on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
But I said yesterday on Facebook, I said, for today now, I honestly don't see anything developing in our vicinity, either in the midday or the afternoon or early evening in terms of thunderstorm activity. This was during the time yesterday when SPC had us in marginal severe possibilities. But I said I will tip my hat to the folks at SPC because I am not an expert in severe weather. I am more of a general practitioner in terms of weather. I said maybe somebody over there knows a little bit more than I do and sees something that I don't see. So I did throw in the possibility, however slight, of a thunderstorm for later today, which of course never happened. I also invoked what I called Antoine's rule. And for those of you who remember Tex Antoine, who used to do the weather both on Channel 4 and Channel 7 back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Tex used to say, and he was not a meteorologist, but whenever a cold front was coming through the area, even if the Weather Service, or back then the Weather Bureau, didn't call for a chance of a shower or thunderstorm, Tex would throw it in because in Tex's mind, well, a front is a front. And that's what I said for today. We have a cold front moving through around the late day or evening hours tonight. It's moving on by. It's going to get very hot and very humid again. A front is a front, and that's why I mentioned.
Well, you know, my rule with those things is if you don't put it in, if you really take the brave stand and not put it in, there's going to be that one tiny little pimple that pops up on the radar.
Right.
And it's on one particular spot. It just happens to be usually on the particular spot where one of your resident Facebook trolls might be, and it over there, so that they can go on your Facebook page and just point out what a horrible forecaster you are because you didn't pick out that storm that formed right over their head.
Exactly. Yeah, precisely.
Oh,
and it has happened, folks. Yes, of course. Indeed, it has happened.
All right, so let's go back to the maps here. So we got SPC out of the way, and excuse me. By the way, interesting statistic that Scott Briller passed on to me this morning. I'm going to bring up the upper air map but at the same time, I gotta find this statistic, and I can't do it now. I'll have to remember it, but it has to do with the fact that I believe I'll go back and quote it directly when I can pull it up and be full. You know what? I could do that now. Why don't I just? Why am I doing this to myself? Hang on one second. I might as well do it. I got to get it right. So let's see. New Facebook format means I click on this button and I scroll down to there. This I thought actually was a very interesting statistic. All right, so here it is. Um, Overnight lows of 80 or above, and I believe the low the last night in New York City was 80. Okay, overnight lows of 80 or above since the late 1970s. Okay,
Right.
have occurred. I didn't realize it was this many, Joe. But you want to take a wild stab as to how many times it's happened since the late 1970s?
Overnight lows of 80 or above.
Yes.
40, 40. I'm going to say 120 times.
All right, it's not that bad. It's not
Okay.
that bad. 40 times. I thought that was a high number. Okay, when
Yeah.
you think about it, because that
Well,
average is
that's like
that.
one per summer, right?
What's that?
One per summer.
Roughly would come out one per summer, but
Right.
you know that a number of summers didn't have it, so we probably had a few of some of the hotter ones where we maybe had it 3 or 4 times. But between 1950 and 1978, how many times do you think the low was above 80?
Um, 5.
Close. Two.
2.
Two. I mean that's an interesting statistic. I thought that to go from such a small number over 28 years. I don't know. You could really derive anything from that, um, but it is noteworthy that we've seen more and more of these 80-degree nights in the last 40 years, and only in the prior 30 before that, only two.
Well, wouldn't that be attributable to what we call the heat island? That as we continue each year to see more and more structures being built, mostly of brick and stone and whatever,
Right.
that's going to help to trap in the heat. And my goodness,
But on the other hand, New York City is is it's almost non-existent now, but it's far less industrial than what it used to be.
I understand that, but just the very mere fact again that we have so many of these structures that can, take for example where I lived. I used to live in Throgs Neck.
Right.
My house
Well, I
was
did too. So go on.
my house was brick. My house faced toward the west northwest, and so in the summertime, that late day sun beat down on those bricks. I could remember, Joe, on more than one occasion being outside at 11 o'clock at night, and the temperature was still 90 degrees.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like,
For me, I had my house faced northeast. So I didn't have it wasn't as bad. You could sit on the stoop at night, which is what you do in the Bronx on a hot summer night when you don't have, years ago, if you were lucky enough to have air conditioning, and not everybody did. We had it, I think, in one bedroom for a while uh, before we finally got it in all the rooms. But
right.
yeah, I mean, you'd go outside, and that's how you cooled off, and you could feel the heat radiating off your stoop along
The
with your
first,
along with your neighbors.
I was still living at home when I got my first job, which was at a private weather service, and my first paycheck.
Wasn't that a 40,000 watt radio station in
Fresno, California.
Fresno, California, or Fargo, North Dakota? Go on.
Uh, don't laugh. I actually did the weather for Pierre, South Dakota, at one time
You
in
mean
my
Pierre, South Dakota? You went.
no.
Yeah, I know it's Pierre, but you went down that road with Pierre.
Right. I said Pierre the first time out, and they stopped and they said, "Hold it." I said, "But it looks like Pierre." He said, "No, but we call it Pierre." But my first paycheck, I went down to wherever Topsy's or wherever they sold appliances and bought myself an air conditioner. That was, and I used to like put and it was I had a small room, so what I do is I just turn the air conditioner on high, close the door. and I waited. And then 15 minutes later, I just opened it up, and it was be like walking into a freezer. But all those years that I suffered up in that room with the extreme heat,
I
um,
know.
nice,
It was another time. We are very fortunate that we don't have to do that now in our old age
right?
or older age. All right, so let me bring up let's bring up the GFS, and then we can do some tropics uh, and take a look at what's happening. So the main theme, as we have said many times over the last week or so, has been this ridge, this east-west ridge, and then the northerly flow that's been running right along the Canadian border. And it would be a matter of who has who flexes their muscles stronger. And of course, we've come out of the weekend, and you see the south of 35 degrees north. It's nothing but high pressure across the southern half of the United States, and then right across the Atlantic. It's this very narrow east-west high. We're going to swing a shortwave or attempt to swing a shortwave through here. There's one that actually goes by to our north tonight. We're not going to get a whole lot out of it, except I think the temperatures might be a little bit low. They should be a little bit lower tomorrow than today, I would think. Uh, I don't think we're going to see the upper 90s again on Tuesday.
No, I think that we'll probably be looking at temperatures tomorrow hovering, I think, here in the Hudson Valley within a few degrees of 90.
All right,
Uh,
I went generally upper 80s and low 90s for tomorrow. I'll get a southwest wind. That'll definitely keep me in the 80s. And of course, the question is at the end of the week, we have a shortwave trough that is swinging through the east. And of course, well, as always happens when you get closer to the time frame, the GFS loves to back off on the strength of that trough, which it kind of does. But there's still enough there, I think, that we should have some reasonable relief in the humidity department this weekend, at least for a day or two. And then the ridge is going to try to flex, but you still got this troughing that's out near 70. And again, we're kind of sitting on the edge of this. I'm not 100% sure where this is all going to go. I got to go back one run because the new run's not out far enough for some reason. The east-west ridge is still there at the end of the month, sitting in the lower Mississippi Valley, and we're right on that edge of that flow, Joe, that Canadian flow. And going into August, it it wants to be a little bit busier with that northerly flow. At least it's close enough that I think it says that we get weather fronts to come through every 3 or 4 days or so. Maybe it gets hot. It probably gets hot for a day or two before a front goes by, and then we get a break for a day or two with lower humidity and slightly lower temperatures. The nice thing is that the last day on the 384 is August 5th.
oh,
So after August 5th, the normal temperatures start to drop. So when we start getting these air masses later in the month of August, particularly late in the month of August, if they're coming down from Canada, they may actually be reasonably cool when they come down. So
you
I'm
realize that you
this
realize this is the last weekend of July coming up.
yes,
Amazing.
not my favorite. I think July is probably my least favorite month,
Hmm.
if only because I just don't have patience for the heat anymore.
Well, neither do I. I never had patience for the heat. If I had the choice between extreme heat and extreme cold, I would take the extreme cold
Because
because the extreme heat is like
because
you're
you
like
could
a caged animal,
because you could always warm up.
right?
You could always find a sheep or something and just wrap yourself around it. But it's a lot. It's a lot harder to cool down. So I'm bringing up the tropics because I think we're going to probably get soon. Fairly soon, we're going to have to be paying close attention to whatever's going to be happening. And one thing I'm noticing, Mr. Rayo, I'm showing the wind shear 200 millibar to 850 map. And going forward, well, a couple of things. First off, with the system in the Gulf, actually, the upper air winds in the Gulf are not that unfavorable for something to develop there. Be it either the system that is in the Northwest Gulf now or the one that's in the Florida Straits that's going to go into the Gulf of Mexico. It's not, they're not ideal, but the upper air winds are not that strong. So from that standpoint, it's helpful. There also is a tropical wave out in the Atlantic that the Hurricane Center mentions coming off the Cape Verde Islands. And even here, we're seeing an area of light upper air winds until it gets further west, and then once it gets there, you suddenly start have this growing area of wind shear late this week east of the Windward and Leeward Islands and out into the Atlantic. So that'll probably shut that off. But the overall trend, I think, as we go forward, especially toward the last days of July and into August, into early August, the Atlantic looks the upper air winds across the Atlantic are not that unfavorable for tropical cyclone development. So it seems like, at least from the standpoint of what's going to be going on in the upper atmosphere, that it's going to time out with the fact that we're going to now go into the busiest months of the hurricane season, August into early October.
Now, I'm just looking at, sorry about that, John.
It's all right.
I'm just looking at a few of the messages on the chat board here. And Frank Riccio says he can't understand why it didn't hit 100 in New York today. But
it only got to 94 in New York City at the park. I think 94
temperatures were in the mid and upper 90s at JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark, though. I don't know if
well,
that's
I know the thermometer in the park went from being it's over grass and there's trees around there. Once upon a time, that was not the case. So it seems that the New York City temperatures usually are a couple degrees, well, a couple of degrees lower, and the runway effect is probably less prominent now because there's not that many planes flying in and out of the local airports. So there's maybe less of a risk of the exhaust of the plane blowing onto the thermometer, like that happens all the time at LaGuardia. But the airports, 97 at Kennedy makes sense because the wind was mostly west today, west or west northwest wind, and Kennedy burns up. Farmingdale got to 97. Islip, I think, maybe got to 91 or 2, but that's how it happens. So
this is the ninth, by the way, the ninth time that Central Park hit 90 degrees, and the normal or the typical number for the summer is 17, and the all-time record is 39, and that 39 was set twice in 91 and 1993.
And by the way, I said 12 for the whole summer, so I only have 3 cards left to play. I hit it on the nose last year. I think I said 15, and it was 15. Yeah, but so I got three cards left to play. I'm going to play one tomorrow, probably, and then after that I have to take my chances. So let's take a look at what's going on in the tropics. So first, I want to go into the northwest Gulf of Mexico, because if you look closely on the satellite, there is a little circulation. There's a weak low that is there. You can see some low clouds turning on the southwest edge of the cloud shield and the convection that is up in the northwest Gulf. And in fact, on the 18Z map, there was a low analyzed with a northwest wind also out there from one of the buoys. So there is a little surface low there. Let's see with the 21Z map if it's out yet. It usually is by now, and it is. And again, they were also analyzing here a weak low, a 10-12 low. They don't have a closed isobar around it. And the Hurricane Center did mention that it looked a little better organized this afternoon, but it is going to be moving northwestward and into the coast probably sometime later on Tuesday. So there's always the chance that it could blow up in here right before landfall, particularly now where the Gulf of Mexico water temperatures are cooking up close to 90 degrees in the northwest Gulf. So it is possible. And the other thing is the system. Well, it's not. It's the area of clouds that's over the Florida Straits and over Cuba, and they are analyzing a tropical wave here, but there's no closed circulation at all. Most of the winds are either east or northeast. But if you look at satellite, you see the clouds there, rather disorganized. And I'm going to change views. I'm going to go to the tropical Atlantic so we could see the third system. And let's go to the tropical Atlantic. There we are. Geocolor. Let's put 60 frames in there, and we'll take a look. So we'll just give it a minute. We'll give it a couple of seconds here for it to load. And you see the wave action that's out in the tropical Atlantic, southwest of the Cape Verde Islands. There actually looks like a little bit of turning at mid-levels there. And the Hurricane Center did mention that conditions are slightly favorable for another couple of days before they become unfavorable, as we showed you why. Starting to see, and this is important for those of you who watch the tropics, remember we were talking about the fact how all the clouds that were in the intertropical convergence zone, that's the area generally down near just north of the equator where you see that band of showers and storms from the African coast to the coast of South America, that we had to wait for that to start moving northward. Well, that's beginning to happen now. And in fact, if you notice, there's this big tropical wave that is coming off the African coast, or will be coming off the African coast in a day or two. That is much further north than where this one is. This one is somewhere down around 6 or 7 degrees north, certainly south of 10 degrees north. That one's going to be somewhere between 10 and 15 degrees north. So this may be the beginnings of these tropical waves that move off the African coast, where you have an opportunity to see these develop into the Cape Verde type storms. So starting to see the action in the tropics that would lead you to believe that we're going to have a busy August and September. We'll have to wait and see what what's going on the Pacific side, which when it's busy there, it's usually not busy on our side, and so far it has not been that busy on the Pacific side.
Is it my imagination, or if on that satellite? No, it's not what I thought it was.
What did you think?
I thought I saw like a fast-moving blob of Sahara dust moving almost straight from right to left, but I think actually what that is, I think that actually is the reflection of the sun.
It could be.
Yeah.
You know, there might be some. Most of that looks like it's moving more northwest and north. So
Yeah.
perhaps it came off a little bit, did come off the Sahara, and is getting pushed up to the north as everything starts to shift northward out there. I'm going to bring up the. Let me bring up the Pacific here. And here we go. So let's go to the tropical Pacific, because there's a couple of things out there that we could look at.
I think there's one. What is it? The off of Baja?
Well, we have a almost tropical storm south and west of Baja California. And I'll let the loop build here. Let's make this a little bit smaller. There we go. So here is they made this a depression, okay, and by tomorrow it's already almost even at 20 degrees north in the Pacific. And that's the graveyard. Then you have this one that's southeast. That looks well organized, and I think that's going to be a tropical storm at the very least. And that looks like it's moving southwest, and then westward. The first hurricane, if it doesn't get sheared apart, because there is some wind shear action going on out to the west of that. But the Pacific still remains, from the standpoint of activity. I said this to you. Was it yesterday?
Yeah.
That we're at July 20th, and we still have not had a hurricane in the Eastern Pacific. That is really that's late. That is very late for them.
That's amazing. You're absolutely correct. Usually the Pacific has the lion's share of tropical activity. So for the Pacific not to have a hurricane yet this late in the season is really odd. Now we've seen that in the Atlantic. I know that there have been some years in the Atlantic that we haven't seen a hurricane until the end of August
or even September.
But that's not.
That's not a shocker. But on the Pacific side, when they're sometimes throwing hurricanes out in early June, and by the end of June you've already had 3 or 4 on the table, this is a very, very quiet East Pacific season, and again, that it would be supportive for the idea that we could have a rather busy Atlantic season. So I've got Johnny Quest sent me, and then we'll go to Scott's questions for the day. But I have to. So Johnny Quest says, in order to have a VEI 8, okay. When was the last time we had a VEI, which is the volcano explosivity index, okay, of 8. All right. A super eruption of a volcano must erupt. How much ash would have to be produced?
Well, Pinatubo was the last really in the Philippines back in 1991, I believe. That put up a tremendous amount of that. That actually had a bearing on weather in the northern hemisphere for a few years after it erupted.
Yes, but that did not rank an 8 on the VEI index.
So what are we talking about? Krakatoa?
Well, it might even have been worse. It says the last one of that magnitude, it would be 240 cubic miles of ash. And the last one of that magnitude happened 640,000 years ago at Yellowstone.
Ah. Well, you know,
they're talking Yellowstone's ready to blow at any moment.
It would have been nice to know the scale of where this thing was going or whatever.
Well, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a volcanic explosivity index.
Now, didn't they say? I heard that there's a volcano on one of the Canary Islands, and that if it erupts, it's going to cause some kind of a tsunami that's going to go across the Atlantic
Well,
Ocean.
I think they're worried about. I think what they were worried about that if something happened over at that volcano on the Canary Islands, that it would slice the western part of the island, would literally get sliced off and drop into the Atlantic Ocean, and then just create this like huge wave that goes all the way across for 4,000 or 5,000 miles or so. If it winds up that being that I'm 10 miles inland and up in the hills here on the north shore of Long Island, if it brings me beachfront property, I'm all for it. Just go ahead.
He thinks that if that were to happen, though, I think you'd have to be a little bit more inland to. But can you imagine if that were to happen? We'd have maybe about 3 or 4 hours notice, and you talk about what a 500-foot tidal wave or something.
Yes. Oh, good Lord.
The next.
This year ain't. Let's wait to get
people tuning into CBS 880 and listening to Neil Bush or whoever does the traffic report. Well, I see that the Long Island Expressway is a dead stop. And everybody's trying to get to the broad neck of the Lake Sunbelt right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody's trying to go over the bridge from Bronx to Queens or Bronx. Everyone is trying to exit Long Island.
All right, you know what? I'm beating my chest now. It's starting to hurt. By the way, Scott Briller double checked, and I actually got it right yesterday. Lucille Ball won 5 Emmys. Okay, a total of 5, not 4.
Could I have one of them?
Oh, the Susan.
This is the honest to goodness truth. I was a presenter one year at the New York Emmys.
Yeah.
And so and I forget his name. Maybe those of you who are into hockey will know who I'm talking about. His first name was Stan. I don't know. I forgot what his last name was. He went up there. I gave him his Emmy. He went up there. He gave a speech. He said, "Thank you very much." He walked off and he left the Emmy on the podium.
Is that? You know what? I know who you're talking about because Stan.
And I held the Emmy up. I said, "Stan." And I said to myself, "You jerk, take it." He's not going to miss it.
Put it in your Put it in your pocket.
What did you call
me? Get Mrs. Ray, or you could put it in her purse.
What did you call me? The Susan Lucci of
the Susan Lucci of
Emmy,
and I mean that, and Joe, I mean that in the most loving way.
But I do have it as you are well aware. It is difficult just to get a nomination.
No, it's very hard.
And it's I've had 8 of them, and I struck out all 8 times or whatever. But
you had 8 nominations.
Yeah,
which is 8 more than I had.
Which is but you have, how many do you have?
2.
You have 2.
I have 2 Emmys.
So
just
there you go.
2. It's here somewhere. I don't even know where it is.
Hey, but I still, if I can get back into the game, I mean, our dear
look,
friend,
dear
beloved friend Bob Wolf. I was at an Emmy ceremony just a few years ago. Bob was 96 years old and he had been nominated for an Emmy.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure he had won a few prior to that, but it just goes to show you, it doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you can perform, but first you have to get back into the game. So
Well, you and I are both eligible to get longevity Emmys because we have, we worked in the market, both of us, for over 25 years.
yeah, to get one of those, yeah, but in some cases when you get an Emmy that the governor's award, that's what it's called.
Well,
The governor,
no, this is different from the governor's award. There's like, if you're in something they used to have, where if you were there for 25 years or more, you get like an honorary. You get an honorary Emmy that you have to pay $500 for.
Red Skelton, the great Red Skelton, who was on CBS for like 20 years. He was in the top 10, and then CBS suddenly decided, oh, we're going to get rid of all the TV shows that have a rural theme, like Petticoat Junction and
Right.
Greenacre, and all the shows that cater to old people, like Jackie Gleason and Red Skelton or whatever. And so they dropped him, even though he had
Yeah.
internet hit or
Yes,
buffering.
I'm sorry. I just took a little bit of an internet hit, and it just came back. So
Okay.
I think we're back. So I was in the middle of saying, Frank Riccio, thank you so much for hitting super chat. Really, really appreciate it. It's enough there for us. There's enough there for you and I to go out and get a couple of beers, if we could ever go out and get a couple of beers again.
Right. Get a cool
Um,
drink. Well, the cool drink for me will be like iced tea or a Coke or something because I don't drink beer.
Chuck
Joe are award winners. Thank you, Mark G. Thank you.
uh, Chuck Chuck Cardillo, talking about the Pacific, and mentions about the fact that, is it because the water temperatures are running below normal? They actually are running below normal up in the East Pacific, particularly down south of 10 degrees north, and that is part of the weak La Nina, or on the way to a weak La Nina. Although I've seen a few things around saying that maybe it won't get to a full, true weak La Nina. Either way, even just the fact that it's kind of trending toward that may be enough. I really just, to me, that all the Atlantic systems in the last couple of months have wanted to spin up, and have done so rather effectively, because early in the season it's really, really tough. But that we've gone through 6 named storms already, and notice the 3 week disturbances. Even the one in the Western Gulf is trying to do something with what little it has to work with. So I think it does speak to the kind of season it may be. Now, if the pattern changes at the beginning of August, and suddenly you got wind shear all over the place, well, then I'm gonna look like a fool for saying what I just said. But I'm gonna just stick to the idea that we are going to have a busy August and September.
I think so.
And I think, Peter Bicker, you're correct. It's probably that the system, tropical depression AD in the Pacific, that looked well organized, probably has time to become the season's first hurricane in the East Pacific. So we'll see what that does. But ultimately, it winds up going into the Pacific graveyard, because um, so few of them make it even to Hawaii. I've always found it fascinating, Joe, how you get this. There's been so many hurricanes over the years, and some of them have been really formidable, approaching Hawaii. They get within they're 300 miles east of Hawaii. They could be Category 4s, and then there's like this there's this area of almost semi-permanent wind shear over there, and they all, except under rare conditions, they all just seem to fall apart as they move toward the islands.
Right. Right. In fact, you still have my Paul Hagaruchi Weather in Hawaiian Waters book, and he had a chapter on storms that actually affected or physically hit the Hawaiian Islands, and they were few and far between, but they have happened. In Nikki, that's right. Right after Hurricane Andrew hit and devastated Florida and the Gulf Coast, a year later, Hurricane Eniki
Yeah, I
went
remember. Yes, Iniki.
and hit Kauai with something like 130 or 140-mile-per-hour winds, which practically is unheard of for the Hawaiian Islands usually, but every once in a while it does happen.
Yeah, every once in a while you get them where they form south of Hawaii and move straight northward.
Right.
Those are the ones that tend to hold together and are the most damaging. The ones that come in from the west usually tend, and we've had a few of them over the years that we've had on our, that we've covered uh, here on our show. Those usually tend to be less of a problem than the ones that come up straight from the south.
Right.
So I guess that's it for tonight. We're good.
Well, we still have to do Briller Jeopardy.
Do you have something for me? Because I don't
Yes.
think I think I used mine for you yesterday.
Well, I do have something for you. Briller Jeopardy for Monday. This one, the chairman says, is so easy. What is the only number spelled with the same number? Wait a minute. So easy but clever. What is the only number spelled with the same number of letters as it's spelled?
You mean like the number four has four letters?
Yes, that's. I had more difficulty actually reading the question the way it was worded than you had with the answer. Yes, it's
Oh,
the
so they
number
could. All right, so that's my answer. Four.
four. Right. The only number spelled with the same number of letters as itself, the number
The
four.
number four.
Right.
All right.
And question two is, what film did Steven Spielberg direct that he won his first Oscar?
Schindler's List.
Schindler's List is right. And question number
He had
three,
been nominated a number of times before that, but
he is, oh,
he had the Alfred Hitchcock curse.
all right.
The
And
really, if you look back at the directors, and it's a jealousy thing, it has to be. There are a number of great directors who had either never won an Oscar for directing, or if they did win, they had to wait forever to get it. Steven Spielberg. Oh, good God! His face is right in front of me. I can't believe I've drawn a blank on him. He's produced. His movies are like 4 hours long, and he's got big eyebrows. Come on,
I'm trying to,
he's Italian.
I know who you're talking about. Um, he was the
I can't
director
believe
of,
this. He directed The Irishman, the recent movie, The Irishman.
I know who you're talking about, Joe. I
I
just
can't
the name.
believe I can see his big eyebrows right in front of me right now. I cannot believe I've drawn a blank on this.
Scorsese,
Right,
right?
Martin
Right.
Scorsese.
Martin Scorsese.
Also, went many years and did a number of great movies along the way. Nominated many times. Finally, I think he won for something. I don't remember which one, but I mean, Hitchcock never won a director's Oscar. I mean,
That is,
that is almost unimaginable to me. A man as brilliant as he was, and he never won a director Oscar. He got a lifetime achievement award, but for some reason among directors, there's this there's if you're really good, if you are really great at being a director, they all pile on against you when you don't win an Oscar.
yeah. I this is not Briller Jeopardy. This is not from Scott Briller, but I just something I just happen to know. On the list of the 50 considered to be the 50 greatest movie directors, who is number 50?
I have no idea. Howard Schmidlap. I don't know.
Jerry Lewis.
Really?
In fact,
It's funny because I saw something popped up on my Facebook page yesterday. One of those things that you click on that is supposed to tell you all these gory details about the person's life, and it was about Jerry Lewis.
right.
And I didn't, and what a terrible father he was, apparently, according to this article. Uh, but I only read like maybe the first part of it, and is like, this is old news. I don't need to know
That was
this.
probably why he. That's probably why he wrote out all of his sons in his will.
Well, that
Um,
was what they started getting into that. Here's the thing. I don't know how you feel about this, but uh, you really don't know what goes on inside somebody's home. negative stuff and positive stuff, and you see all this stuff that appears in these stories that have appeared over the years about this person or that person and how evil this one was, and some of them are true. Some of those people are horrible human beings, but it's you don't know what's going on in someone's personal life that causes those things to happen. So I try not to get I try not to be judgmental about that sort of stuff.
Well, the reason why Jerry Lewis is among the top 50 directors is he actually invented a device. It sounds very much like the electronic cam system that they used on the honeymooners.
Okay.
It allows you to, or it allowed him when he was doing a movie, to instantly see, kind of like a combination of a movie camera and a video camera, allowed him to see what he had just shot, so that if he didn't like what he had just shot, he can do it again instead of waiting for it to be developed and blah 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 blah. It's like an instantaneous thing, and supposedly today that device is used by movie companies and directors all over, and it was he who developed that, and primarily because of that. But also he actually, some of his students. Spielberg was one of his students in terms of directing, and a few other well-known directors. So
Hmm.
he, we know him as a comedian and sometime as an actor, even once as a singer. He had a couple of hits. Broke up with Dean Martin. Jerry Lewis had a top 10 song. Um,
Yes.
so he was very talented, and again, in terms of direction, he is considered among the top 50. So
And by the way, we see when we see stuff, the stuff that we see is the world that I think we either think it is or the world that we'd like it to be, but in reality, it's pretty seedy and it's difficult, and people go home at night after a hard day's work, or sometimes they don't because they have to pull all nighters and work the next day. I've been watching on Netflix Hollywood, which is about the time, I would say probably the late 1940s, or just after World War II ended. So it's the late 1940s in Hollywood. They're making movies, and they are using uh, real people that actually, were directing or agents at the
right.
time. Not everybody. They brought in somebody that's supposed to be a very young Rock Hudson, and they're using, they're pulling stuff from real life, from their real life experiences. And I have to tell you, if you watch that, you will shake your head in amazement that, and I bet it probably was pretty close to. It paints a very very uh, negative picture of the mechanics of movie making in the studio system,
Oh
and
yeah,
what's that?
I said, oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and the casting couch. The casting couch worked both ways. By the way, it wasn't just women on the casting couch. It was men too, including Rock Hudson. So, but it there. Okay, so apparently I just took another internet hit. So you know what? I think it's time to go.
I think it is.
All right, folks. I'm
Uh,
sorry about that. We're taking hits left and right here. So God knows what's going on with the internet system tonight with all the heat. It's probably messed them up. Uh, but that's the cable company that I use. Okay. So we'll see you tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Frank Riccio, thank you again for hitting Super Chat. We also had one other person hit Super Chat tonight, but I didn't get to see who it was. Did you get to see who it was?
I will check. It's Frank Riccio and Nick Cortez.
Very good. Thank you,
Thank you,
Nick.
Nick.
Appreciate it. And we'll be back tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Have a great night, everybody. Take care, Mr. Rayo.
You too, sir.